Hi, my name is Chaplain Christina Montel, and I am with Carrier Air Wing 7, stationed at Naval Air Station Oceana in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And this is Stepping Off the Brow, a show for sailors and military-connected civilians where we look at life's issues on both sides of the ship's brow. So whether you are stepping off the brow to come to work, stepping off the brow to come home, or you're waiting for someone to step off the brow to come home to you, this show is for you. More importantly, during this time of COVID-19 and all things Navy life, we wanted to introduce you to people and their stories that can give you strength for today and a bright hope for tomorrow.
We have an off-the-cuff segment this morning, and can you remind us, and for those who may be joining us for the first time, what is our off-the-cuff segment?
So our off-the-cuff is when Chaplain Slido, in his infinite dad humor, shares some random story that he has found in his musings on the internet, and tries to gauge my reaction to dad humor, which is poor at best. So
I think my kids will someday value that dad humor, by the way.
No.
Okay, on that note, I think as a Navy sailor, what we can value is the idea of economy of space, right? Like, how much space do we get when we're underway? Well, as an air wing officer, obviously you get a ton of space because you just living large on the carrier. But for those
Excuse me,
regular
you had
sailors,
I had two.
I'm sorry. Anyway, it's not about me. This is about sailors here. So sailors, I remember I visited my brother on a tiger cruise. And what is a tiger cruise, everybody?
Tiger cruise is where they put tigers.
No, there are no tigers.
No, there's no tiger. It's where you invite your family to come on board, and they see what you do. They get. It's usually towards the end of the cruise, and you can invite a family member, and they just sort of spend a couple of days just following you around, seeing what the Navy does.
And the family gets to actually sleep in the berthing, as we call that. That's in the racks. So my brother was is a plank owner for the USS Cole. And so Greg, I even got his first jacket. Very, very proud. But anyway, so I went on the Tiger cruise with him when he got back, and I remember trying to lay in the rack and just thinking, man, this thing is so small. I couldn't spin around and roll over. But anyway, so our off the cuff here is, let me share my screen. Share screen. Is this right here? It's the skinniest house in London.
I've heard this one.
It's crazy because you think, oh, it's London, it's listed for 1.3 million, not a big deal. The thing,
no more than 7 feet.
No, it's a 6-foot wide home. I mean, Look at this. Can you see this right here? This little grayish blue house.
Do you know why it's that way?
Well, I like to make some comment about how Europeans don't have a felt need like we as Americans do to stretch out and live large. But I think it's probably a better idea.
The story that I heard about it was a somebody back in the day, olden times, their servant was not in the in the 1880s when you were born. So there was some servant that the guy he worked for said, "I'll build you a house as wide as my door," and his door was 6 feet wide, so he built this house for him. That's what I've heard.
I guess that's close. According to the story, it was originally a hat shop that was converted into a home by a fashion photographer. Quirky, charming, as you see, great for entertaining. But I just wonder,
it's like me,
quirky and charming, and not very big. So I could see it looks kind of haze gray if you look at the picture there. And
I would live there. I mean, it's 3 stories. I mean, it's cute.
It's 1,000 square foot.
Yeah, I mean that's
5 stories. 5 stories. 5 stories.
5 stories. Wow. Yeah, I mean that's
there you go.
Plenty. Yeah.
I
I
I
like it.
think I think a Royal Navy sailor should really take up that house, except for it's
I would agree with that.
$1.3 million. Okay. What was the what was the trade-off you feel like? Because I was an E5 previously and finished up college. And I remember the trade-off at that time because we didn't have any kids. We were married, but just thinking how all the friends want to get together, but I was doing homework. All the friends want to go on a trip somewhere, but I'm doing homework. And so with being a single parent, like what are some of the trade-offs you found as far as kind of making parenthood work while making also career work?
Okay. So I would say you're saying like if I wanted to find like like kind of like me time, what
Yeah, or like what like if as you look back you go, okay, this was the cost of my path. Like every like that path for me cost me something which is minor in scope, right? Just oh, you don't get to hang out with your friends. But it costs. At that moment, it felt like a cost.
so being a parent with Aiden, getting spending time with him, and I know it's important to as far as having personal time with friends or family. I know for me, from my experience when he was young, I would go home a lot. So it was only an hour drive. So I often went over on the weekends to visit my family, and so that's what I saw. To me, it was fulfilling. So I don't know if that answers your question. I don't know if I'm going in the right
Is
direction.
is it a lot about I think I don't want to say cost, but it's prioritization maybe of, you know, I have to study because I have to get this done. And it's not a cost. It's just that at this point I can't go out with my friends or I can't go do that. So it's like, you know what, I'm going to go home to my family and I'm going to have my son be in an enriching environment with his grandparents and his aunts and his uncles and everything else like that. Well, I'm probably going to be sitting on the couch studying.
Right, right.
Okay. Yeah.
Mhm.
I see
Yeah.
that. Or
Do you think you're,
go ahead.
go ahead.
I was gonna
Do
say,
you think you're
was
kind of
there?
like,
We're stepping all over each other. Hey, I was wondering. So I'm still trying to tease this out. Just and this may not be a thing. So I'll ask one more question, then we'll probably just cut this whole thing out. Um, this part. This is idea like some people I know I hear from different spouses and families how being a Navy family you always come to a new area, don't have any friends, and so there's this kind of a desire for local connections and local community. Um, and so was there something about being where you were, like you were very intentional to be in New Jersey so you could have that easy access to, the grandparents, your parents. But that may have been a trade-off where that means when you were back in your place during the week, you lacked community. Like did you ever have a sense of kind of feeling isolation?
No, not really.
No? Okay.
I during the like I said during the weekends was kind of like how when they like when Friday is done you're like oh I'm gonna go out and Liberty time. So once my work week was done, right, I felt like okay we're gonna go back to New Jersey. So that's where I felt complete as far as holistically my life, so professionally and personally. Also for my son to have a bond with my family. I would say during the week, I had a great support system too at my job. So family oriented. We did things together too, and children were always welcome.
nice.
That's cool. Okay, what command was that in New Jersey?
It was New Jersey, so it
It was
was
what?
Morristown, New Jersey, Moors, and it was called CSED. So it's Combat Systems Engineering Development System.
That's right. That's right. Okay.
So if you ever spoke to anyone, if they drive on I-95 on the turnpike in New Jersey, it looks like a ship out in the cornfield, and you can see it from the turnpike. Yeah, it is shaped like a ship. If you ever Google it.
Nice. So I think that we talk a lot about the challenges of being a single parent, and I was raised by a single parent, so I sometimes I sit back and I think of I'm in awe of my mom of like I'm in my later 30s and I'm like, I don't have kids, I have a cat and I can barely keep my life together. And she was raising 3 kids and, doing 2 jobs and we all turned out pretty well, I think. But I think a lot of it, sometimes we focus on the challenges. What are some of the saving graces that you have found as being a single parent and a sailor? Kind of those, instead of I don't want to say focusing on the negative, but like where have you found that it's been really enriching and fulfilling?
I would say that probably not relying on others um, to to do things for you. So it all begins and ends with you. So if you don't ensure this for your child, who else is going to do it? Or for you to ensure it for yourself, who else is going to do it? Or if you don't budget properly, you're not going to be able to afford certain things. So I think it teaches you, as far as ability is concerned, to have A, B, and C plans put in place that you can apply them to job wise too. And at this time in my life, in my career, I was still the second class. So I think it probably maybe helped you prepare for when you became a first class and senior, to be able to prioritize and plan ahead, right? 2, 3 steps ahead.
So you were stationed Japan, then Norfolk, then New Jersey, and then where did you go from there?
Here, my Jersey is where I had to go back to sea. So at this point in my life, I was 10 years in the Navy, and I had a critical decision of whether I wanted to re-enlist and continue my career. But at
Mm-hmm.
this my life is where I'm a parent. I have a support system in place to be able to bring my child with me. So at this juncture in my life, when I was negotiating for orders, I was only given Japan as a choice. So they were like, so I remember the detailer was like, well, it's Japan or you get out the military. So it was pretty blunt at that point. So uh,
Ouch.
exactly. So I remember I thought about it for days, like, okay, what do I do? What's my next point in life? Do
Mhm.
I go ahead and, transition out, go back to school? Because that's what would have happened. Or do I go ahead and continue my career? And and I also had to ask my family if they would help me out in taking care of my child, because that's what it required. So just talked to my mom, and she was hesitant because it's a lot of responsibility to take a 3-year-old at that time, because that's how old.
Oh yeah.
And so because of that, I was able to continue my career. They saw that I did want to continue my career, and that after that point that I was looking at retirement, do 20 and then retire. So without the support, I would have to get out. So after that, I went to Japan, and Aiden stayed with my mom for about a year. The tour was supposed to be a 2-year tour unaccompanied. So back to Japan, and luckily, after about a year, the ship that I was on, the USS Cowpens, was slated to full swap, and the captain back to Diego. So I remember we're talking about, like, talking to the chaplains. I remember the chaplain at that point, and I don't remember his name. I do not, but I remember he talked to me. He knew about my personal life. He was like, "Hey, I know you're a single parent. I know your kid is back in home with your family." He was like, "Maybe you want to go ahead and take the ship back to San Diego so you could be closer to home." So I do remember talking to the captain, because it wasn't at that point the captain could have said, "Hey, you can stay in Japan with the other ship that's whole swapping," because it wasn't necessary due to my NEC for me to stay on board the original ship, if that makes sense. And
Mhm.
so when I to the captain, he kind of had a soft spot for, hey, you know what, I can keep you here, but I think it would be of more service if you were to go back home and be with family without like bodies or mission.
So what was that like? Um, going like, how did you process that in your mind? Was there a big process where you chewed on that and do I ask? Do I not ask?
I did, because like well, can you really ask your CO, like, can I leave with the ship? But I remember the chaplain pushed for that. I remember he even, I mean, now I remember specifically, the captain at that time would meet with sailors weekly because he wanted to know them, and so he would put on the plan of the day, like, sailors so and so, this is a little bit of their personal life. They're from here, they come from here, and I like that he did that. And I remember he had a map, and he would pinpoint, or he would point, like, put tack marks on it from sailors or where they're from. So I thought that was interesting. So I remember when the ship was getting ready to do a hull swap, and I remember the chaplain was like, "You need to schedule your that weekly meeting and talk to the captain and talk to him about it." So he pushed me, like, "You need to tell him because he doesn't know this about you."
Gosh.
So,
And so, so often there is this, there's a line I feel like we have a hard time identifying. That line is, how do we, serve sacrificially? But then there's a line where, we've got I'm losing the question.
I think it's good boundaries.
Right.
Of like,
Yeah.
I've already spent a year away from my son. Here is this opportunity. Why would I not ask? And I always tell this to people. The worst answer they can say is no.
right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I think that's what I was trying to get at was, did you feel the tension of that line, that boundary of wanting to be sacrificial, wanting to still be part of the team, but also, finding that boundary of, okay, now I need to ask the Navy to be sacrificial for, my family.
I did because, I mean, the order is a 2-year tour to be out there.
Yeah.
So I did, like, it wasn't necessary for the captain to say sure, because he did tell me when I conversed with him, he was like, "I don't have to let you go," he was like, because it's not required per your NEC to stay on board the ship. But he did say that, I mean, of course he talked with to ensure that there wouldn't be like a gap billet, or can the work be done without this person being with us. So, but it took me. I remember when I talked to the chaplain, I'm like, no, I don't think I should ask that of him, or can you do that, or I'm supposed to do my job. But I remember he was like, just ask him, just talk with him about it.
Do you think that's the mark of a good leader, of when they listen and weigh evaluate the needs of my command versus the needs of the whole versus the needs of the individual, and how can I help make this happen for said person?
You're talking about, like, with that
Your
experience?
CO, yeah.
Yeah, I would say yes, ma'am. So from that experience, I think it kind of opens your eyes a little bit, that it's not just all about work to the bone, right? Because you need to ensure that your sailor is okay home wise, and because otherwise they could work to the bone, but they could reach a breaking point where they could not recover. So there was many where I saw that leaders alike, like first class chiefs, the officers, that when they would see, like, what, no, there's a point where this sailor needs to go home and take care of his personal life, and then he will come back. So I would see that.
Yeah, that's good.
So what would be some advice, Chief, that you would give to single parent sailors that are young in their career, kind of looking back, when you were that second class with a kiddo?
As far as, like, the single sailors young in their career, it is tough. It's tough because you're like, oh, I have no support, I'm far away, because I had a brand new baby, and it really was on my own. But you just got to remind yourself that it could be, the grass is not always greener on the other side. So I was able to see that, do I have, is my child fed? Yes. Does my child have diapers? Yes. Can I go ahead and purchase this? Yes, I can. Am I able to do this? Am I able to do my job? Yes, I can. So I had to remind myself that, from personal experience from my sister, she was having her children when I had my son. And I just had to always tell myself, like, she's having it a lot tougher than I am. So, I shouldn't complain. I should be more gracious.
Wow, and that's, I didn't even think about that when I was putting that question together. That one of the challenges would be comparison, and kind of feeling bad because oh, it must be it'd be so much easier if it'd be so much easier if. But you said by boiling it down, uh, you like, hey, we got food, we got diapers, I got a job, we're okay.
Yes, we're okay. Yes, because there are
So,
people.
oh no, I'm sorry.
No, yeah, it's always there are people that I just felt like in the military, there is there's so many resources available that people in the civilian world don't have resources. So I was more grateful than always, oh, I don't have this, or I'm far away from family, or I was forced to do this because I wasn't. So I just
And off the top of your head, can you think of some resources that you would say, hey, young sailor, if you're struggling with maybe those basics, like who could, off the top of your head, I know I'm putting you on the spot, that you would turn to if you needed to?
so I remember when I was in during my pregnancy that things because you kind of find a little um, community of other pregnant women. So they tell you, hey, take Fleet and Family offers this, and so they have like baby budget. They have, and I took those classes, right? Baby budget. Make sure you budget for this. And I remember they had other classes even after I gave birth, and it was all through Fleet and Family, and they had a not a consultant, but more like. Mm, Someone to help you with the transition of milestones of baby, and she was there. She came to my house, and so to
Oh,
me I was like,
wow.
right, she would come to my house, and she was employed by Fleet and Family. I was grateful for that. And she kind of asked the question. She was like, oh, what's the baby doing? Oh, he's meeting his milestones. Oh, is there anything that you need? Are you having any difficulties or anything? And all this was provided, and I was actually uh surprised that Fleet and Family would offer those kind of things.
Yeah, and
So
it's just like one of those like life skill educator type people, but
yes,
yeah.
yeah, she kept in touch. So there are people that care about you like that. You just really have to kind of see that.
So it sounds like maybe some wisdom you would have for a single parent sailor is one, just establishing good boundaries for yourself, and two, like, even if you don't know where to get the help, ask for the help. The chaplain, Fleet and Family, there are resources out there, and if something's not happening, you kind of have to tell people that, like, hey, I need some help here because it's there.
Yeah, there's no shame in that. I know that it could be a pride thing sometimes, like, no, I can do this, but I think I also had a good chief at that moment when I was stationed in Norfolk, and I remember my chief. He was like, hey, when you give birth, let me know. So that showed a lot of care. Like, he was like, hey, are you okay? When I called him, he was like, is everything okay? Is the baby okay? So, I mean, there are people that care. So, and I know sometimes people take it as, um, oh, I don't need to, let people know that something's happening in my life or I can't take care of it. There's no shame in that, because not only does your chain of command care about, like, hey, your job, but they also care about your personal life too.
So just like a chain of command that advocates for you and cares.
Yes.
Similar question for the last one though is like, what would be some advice you would give to leaders that have single parent sailors?
So I would say, as far as being in the leadership position, having the single parent sailors, I will say it's a different ball game. So because you do have sailors that sometimes they didn't reach out for resources, or they let things fester, and then there comes to a point where it's like, oh, now I can't do this. So for leaders to definitely be involved and always asking questions, be intrusive to a point, to say, hey, is this going okay? Is that going okay? So that way things don't fester, or things are not brought to light. Oftentimes, when young sailors, when they have things on their mind and someone asks them for something, it's kind of like diarrhea of the mouth. They're going to tell you.
Yeah.
So ask the questions. If you don't, I mean, they're just gonna hold it inside. And you can notice as a leader, hey, is something okay? Is something wrong? Right? And we're always preached, to notice things like that and to ask the questions. Just by asking someone, how is their day? Are they doing okay? So I always made it a point to be intrusive in that point, in that sense.
You said intrusive up to a certain point. What is that point?
Um, Sometimes some sailors can be like, you're pestering me, or I'm okay. So um, they'll let you know too. Hey, I'm fine.
So, Chief, this has been really eye-opening, because I think what we're taking away is what you have, this willingness to take support, and you see the value of taking support, but also you've got this confidence as a leader that there's, like you said, there's no shame in getting support. Actually, you would probably say, I think, that we gleaned from this is that it's normal to need support.
It is.
And that's super helpful, that you would normalize leaning on each other, that we as a fleet, we as a Navy family can and should lean on each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's super helpful. Chris,
Yeah.
any other takeaways for you?
I think you summed it up really well. I think that the fact that you are able to say, like, there are times when I need help, and there are times when I need to put my career first, and there's times when I need to put my family first, and finding that balance and still yet being successful. I think that sometimes people see, especially leaders, when they're willing to see the holistic part of the sailor, of that a single parent is not a detriment to your command. It just might take a little bit more to figure it out. So, yeah, and don't ever count them out, because they bring such a wonderful gift of that idea of reliance and asking for help and being vulnerable. I think that's one of my takeaways.
Any last second thoughts, Chief, before we wrap this up? This has been just really helpful.
No, I appreciate the opportunity to share my experience. I just think that a lot of times, people think that they might be alone, or, how do I do this? And definitely will say that it's not always going to be easy. There will be challenges, but it's nothing that you can't surpass or overcome. Just a right support system. You keep on finding what will do, for sure.
Our theme music is the song Josie O by Jamie Stone. The sweet and sour segment music was Baby Owls Dancing by Avita Peso. The views and opinions expressed are those of the hosts or guests and not the United States Navy. You can subscribe to Stepping Off the Brow wherever you find your favorite podcast. And of course, please feel free to share this with your shipmates, friends, or family. See you next week.